representative from Venezuela is going to have a question in Spanish and I'll translate.
Yo tengo más de 50 años y estoy escuchando a George Benson desde muy joven.
He's over 50 years old and he's been forever listening to George Benson music.
Y lo veo idéntico desde que lo estoy viendo hasta hoy.
And he sees you identical from the first day he saw you.
¿A qué le acredita a él que se vea tan bien?
What's he doing?
A la música.
Love.
Well, I'm over 50 too.
I don't believe.
I'm happy that we still have a decent image in the world, physically speaking. And I feel good. I feel probably as good as we look, I should say. But being on the road, we're energized by our audiences and the contacts that we meet all over the world. And then there's such a thing as smoke and mirrors. You ever heard that term before? I'm a smoke and mirrors kind of guy.
Thanks.
In 1968, you did Shape of Things to Come with participation and contribution with Johnny Pacheco on the congas.
Whoa.
You also did the other side of Abbey Road, like a tribute to your latest CD, his inspiration tribute to Nat King Cole. In 2000, you did Absolute Benson with things like Get to El Barrio, Latin Cool Names. You talk about Bob Marley. Have you ever think about doing a tribute of reggae music, or maybe tonight being in the island? Like, are we going to listen to some Latin groups, sit closer to the island, things like Get to El Barrio, things besides your hits, not a lot of hits?
Man, those are some wonderful questions. I'm glad you asked them. First of all, when I went to New York, I was in a Latino community.
Yeah.
I met Tito Puente, Johnny Pacheco, and a lot of the guys
You
who
know
were
Oscar de
leaders.
Leon? You know Oscar de Leon? No?
No. It was
Bass player and singer
Willie
from
Bobo and people like that. And the Mariano brothers, is that their names? Well, anyway, the Latino community was actually dominated by Puerto Ricans at that time. And what's the great, the tall conga player, the best sound in the world? What was his name? That's another great one.
Conga player, Barreto? Ray Barreto?
Ray Barreto. He was on a lot of the sessions that we did. Had great, big, beautiful sound because his hands were so big.
He did a lot of jazz, Latin jazz.
Latin jazz was catching on before they had salsa. And then salsa came along and boom, went to the moon. And people didn't think of it at first. They didn't think it was going to be important. But it went to the moon overnight. So I had a connection in the very beginning. So I asked my producers, I said, why don't we get some Latin percussion on the music? And I understood why Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie used to ask for it. They had Chino Pozo, I think his name was Chino Pozo or whatever. And now I understood why. Because it made the music solid and it gave it that element, feel good, that I mentioned earlier. Feel good, sound good? Charlie and Dizzy had to sound good. These cats had to feel good. So in my recording, Breezin', I used percussion to make me think of Latino concept. I used, what was his name? The blind player. Jose Feliciano. He wrote the song, but he didn't be. That's what I want in my record. And so I used that concept and put R&B in the background in the jungle, because that was spreading all over the planet. Every country recognized R&B, where before that would have not been possible. But in '76, it was big time. And so I used those elements, and I played very easy to that music, because I've never had a loss to where the rhythm is. I don't have to guess at it. They got it covered. In this case, it was Rock McDonald played percussion. So yeah, man, Latin has always been gigantic, and we played all over the world. In concert with was it Michel Camilo, and from Cuba was the great pianist.
Roberto. ¿Y tú, Andrés?
Yeah, Chucho. Played two different concepts, one in this hand and one in that, two tunes at the same time. Truly incredible stuff. And Michelle is always high with wonderful stuff. So I've had an incredible experience.
What does jazz mean to you after all these years, and especially for the young people? What do you think you hope they get from jazz compared to any other music style?
Well, jazz is always evolving. And like I say, it needs a platform now. And since we lost the radio, for the most part, that was the biggest platform we had for jazz, for all music. And jazz has taken a back seat. Like classical music is taking a back seat now to everything else that's happening. But they are out there. There's some great young musicians who are coming along. And every now and then I run into them and they show us what the future is going to be, because they are the future. So on my album, we had the great Whitney Marsalis, whom I met when he was 13, and he proved to be more than I ever expected him to be. And then there's the great, he played flugelhorn on my record, I can't remember his name, on my Nat King Cole album. He is the king of Europe right now, so time will tell where jazz is going, but it's not going to fade into the past, that's for certain. It is still powerhouse as far as music is concerned.
But what does it mean to you today? What does it represent, jazz? What is it?
Well, jazz has promised to be more than I ever believed it would be. It affected my life in an incredible way. Even through the music of Nat Cole was my favorite singer at the time. Not realizing when I was young how great a pianist he was. It was later when I found out how great a pianist he was, and he had one of the greatest guitar players in his group, with Oscar Moore, and a couple others after that. I really benefited by falling in love with Nat Cole at a very young age. So yeah, jazz today, after being introduced to all the great ones, Miles Davis playing with him, Freddie Hubbard, Cannonball Adderley, Jack McDuff, who was the organist who brought me, Jimmy Smith, great organist. And I met them all over the years, so it's great.
To complement the aggressiveness of the Caribbean, music and dance is two of the, I would say, key aspects of expressive culture of the Caribbean. You play dance music. Do you think that people will relate better to jazz? That's danceable for you?
I think that's important, because jazz started off very danceable. They had the swing era, then he couldn't, and that was big for jazz music. And the thing that changed that was the birth of the cool, when people were sitting in clubs, doing their thing, whatever that was. But it slowed them down and made them listen, and they lost the dance concept, the dance aspect. But through Latin music, they can get it back and still get the improvisational value and be a part of the music. I think that's very important. It's a good question. That lady asked me what.
Yes, jazz still has that intimate feel. So what kind of platform do you like to play? I mean, the Caribbean Jazz Festival is still a smaller setting as compared to major concerts perhaps in Europe. So what do you prefer as a musician yourself?
Well, over the years, I had to master all of the different venues. We played 350,000 people in Brazil at the first Rock in Rio concert. 2 days later, we had another 220,000. So in 2 days, we played to over 500,000 people. We led up to that slowly, and we were able to master that kind of projection, because you cannot take intricate music and project it into a 10,000 seat audience. You can't do it. It goes right over the head. You have to get them involved at the grassroots level. But I do enjoy playing smaller venues. And what has happened as a result, since I know how to kill at 50,000 seats and 100,000 people, when we get in a small club, it's like candy. I can do anything I want to do. I can get as intimate as I want, or just bowl them over with, some of the experiences that we've collected over the years. And we had the pleasure of doing that recently. But I got to get out of here, y'all. I must go.
Thank you.
Last question for you.
Yeah, can I have a